Today we are looking at a comprehensive 10-part presentation detailing the job description, daily responsibilities, and technical competencies of a pharmaceutical quality assurance professional. And jumping right into the critique, the current heavy reliance on industry acronyms alienates a student audience trying to grasp the foundational concepts of quality assurance.
Yeah, that is absolutely the immediate roadblock we hit with this material. I mean, it operates entirely under the assumption of prior industry knowledge.
Right, it really does.
When you look through those initial sections covering the basic roles and responsibilities, the text just drops incredibly dense acronyms. Things like GMP, CAPA, ALCOA+, OOS, IQ, OQ, PQ. And it does this without providing any foundational explanations.
Yeah, which is tough because we have to put ourselves in the shoes of a student who's stepping into this discipline for the very first time. They are eager to learn, but they are immediately met with this massive wall of alphabet soup.
Oh, completely. It creates an immediate cognitive overload.
Exactly. So instead of engaging with the actual underlying concepts, their brain just hits a wall of jargon. And, well, the learning process just effectively stops right there.
Right, because you can't build a house without a foundation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you certainly can't teach technical operations without first translating the language. I think the material assumes that defining an acronym is the same thing as explaining a concept.
Which it isn't.
No, it just isn't true for a beginner.
Let's look at how this plays out in the actual slides. So, in the section discussing documentation and record review, under the pillar of data integrity, the very first bullet point mandates that the professional must verify adherence to ALCOA plus principles.
Right.
Now, I can see the intent here. I mean, the author is clearly ensuring the presentation aligns perfectly with the exact regulatory standards used in the field.
Sure, they want to be accurate.
But if I'm a student, data integrity sounds like an IT issue.
Oh, 100%.
I'm thinking about network security, firewalls, maybe password protection. So, is there a risk that focusing solely on corporate terminology overlooks the fact that students actually already understand these underlying concepts in their own academic lives?
That is a highly perceptive way to frame it. The concepts aren't actually alien to the student at all. Only the vocabulary is.
Right.
Right now, there is a massive gap between this dense technical jargon and the student's existing lived experience. So the suggestion here is to translate these acronyms using relatable, everyday real-world examples before introducing the technical terminology.
Okay, I like that.
You just have to anchor the unknown concept to a known reality.
So if we take that suggestion and apply it to a complex standard like ALCOA Plus, how do we actually do that in practice? Like, how do we build that bridge for a student?
Well, we can compare ALCOA Plus to an experience every single student is deeply familiar with, which is a professor grading a term paper.
Okay, I'm tracking.
So ALCOA stands for attributable, legible, contemporaneous.
Which is a mouthful.
Yeah, it really is. And then original and accurate. So if you are that professor, before you even read the essay, you first need to know exactly who wrote it. You need a name on the top of the page.
Right, which perfectly translates to attributable. You have to trace the work back to a specific individual.
Precisely. Next, you need to be able to read the font easily. It can't be some messy, corrupted file or illegible handwriting.
Yeah, the data has to be clear.
Exactly. That covers legible.
And contemporaneous? Because that's a massive, intimidating word for a student to digest on a slide.
It is, but the concept itself is so simple. Think about the professor. As the professor, you need to see the exact timestamp of when that paper was submitted to the online portal, right?
Oh, to know it wasn't handed in 2 weeks late.
Exactly. The record of the event has to happen at the exact time the event occurred. That is contemporaneous.
That makes so much sense. And then comes original, which, in the context of a term paper, would mean running it through software to ensure it isn't plagiarized or just, generated by an AI.
Yep, the source material has to be the original source. And finally, you have to verify that the historical facts or the statistics cited in the essay are actually correct.
Which gives us accurate.
Exactly.
I love how that just totally demystifies the entire standard, because by walking through the professor analogy first, the student instantly masters the underlying philosophy of the principle.
Right. They understand the why.
Yeah, and then, and only then, do you tell them, by the way, in the pharmaceutical industry, we call this standard ALCOA plus.
And when you do it in that order, the acronym isn't a barrier to entry anymore.
No, not at all.
It just becomes a professional label for a concept they've already completely internalized.
So let's apply that exact same translational logic to the section covering deviations and root cause analysis. The material outlines CAPA management, which stands for corrective and preventative actions.
Right, on slide 4.
Yeah. And the bullet points under this section list steps like defining corrections to address the immediate issue and defining preventative actions to eliminate root causes. But honestly, to a layperson, corrective and preventative sound incredibly similar.
They really do. In corporate speak, they just blur together. But let's look at it from the perspective of a student's everyday living situation.
Okay.
Imagine a student renting a top-floor apartment with a leaky roof.
Sounds like a typical college experience.
Right. So a massive storm rolls in, and suddenly water is dripping rapidly right onto their expensive laptop sitting on the desk.
Oh, panic sets in.
Absolute panic. So they run to the kitchen, grab a large plastic bucket, and slam it down on the desk under the leak to save the laptop.
Okay.
That is the corrective action. It completely stops the immediate damage, right? The laptop is safe.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually solve the core problem, does it? The roof is still broken.
Exactly. If they just leave the bucket bare, it's just going to overflow the next time it rains.
Right. So calling the landlord the next morning and having a professional roofer come out to replace the damaged shingles so the roof never leaks again.
That is the preventative action.
That's brilliant.
If you introduce CAPA through the panic of a leaky roof, students immediately grasp the vital distinction between a temporary, immediate fix and a permanent, systemic solution.
And once they have that conceptual anchor, dropping the term CAPA on them doesn't induce that massive cognitive overload.
No, because you are just giving them the industry vocabulary for a logical behavior they already intuitively understand.
That makes a lot of sense. But getting the language right is really only the first hurdle.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the next point. The presentation of daily responsibilities feels abstract and disconnected from the tangible stakes of patient safety.
And this is where we need to shift from how we talk about the job to how we actually visualize the day-to-day work.
Exactly. Because when you look at the sections detailing daily operations, they list tasks like batch disposition support, equipment qualification, and label and packaging control.
Just sterile, isolated bullet points.
Totally sterile. The material rigorously tells the student what the job is, but it entirely fails to clarify what these tasks actually look like in motion.
Right. It reads like a compliance checklist rather than a dynamic, high-stakes human activity.
Now, to be fair, the material does make a strong case for using specific analytical tools. Like in the root cause analysis section on slide 4, it highlights using the 5 whys and the Fishbone diagram.
Which are great tools.
They are. And it outlines evaluating contributing factors like human, material, method, machine, measurement, and environment. It's incredibly thorough.
Very thorough.
But I keep coming back to the student's perspective. If a 20-year-old student has never set foot on a sprawling pharmaceutical manufacturing floor, how can they possibly conceptualize what a deviation actually is?
Well, they can't.
Right.
They are basically trying to solve a puzzle without knowing what the picture on the box looks like. So the suggestion here is to frame these operational tasks around a single, relatable, real-world narrative or case study that runs continuously through the entire presentation.
A continuous case study.
Yeah. Instead of jumping arbitrarily from one abstract concept to another abstract concept on every new slide, give the student a protagonist to follow.
A protagonist. So you're saying treat the presentation almost like a story.
Exactly.
I've really liked this approach because storytelling is how the human brain naturally retains complex information. I mean, we are always looking for causality. We want to see how A affects B.
Right.
So if I'm interpreting this correctly, the argument here is that a continuous case study bridges the gap between dry theory and physical reality.
Precisely. And in this specific context, the protagonist isn't a person. It's a physical product.
Okay, I see.
Let's track the journey of something incredibly relatable, like an over-the-counter allergy pill. Every single person has taken one, everyone knows what they look like.
Yep, very familiar.
We can use the life cycle of this single allergy pill to illustrate every single technical concept in the presentation.
Okay, let's test that out. Let's look at the concept of deviation escalation, which is listed on slide 2 as a core daily responsibility.
Okay.
Rather than just reading the bullet point that says identify quality events and triage, how do we use the allergy pill to make that real for a student?
Well, you put the student right on the factory floor. You say to them, you are in charge of manufacturing this allergy pill. The pill press machine is supposed to operate at a specific temperature. What happens if that machine suddenly runs 2 degrees too hot?
Oh, wow. Suddenly, a deviation isn't just a dry word on a whiteboard.
No, it's a physical crisis happening in real time.
Because the student can instantly visualize the consequences, like the pill coating might melt.
Exactly. Or the active pharmaceutical ingredient might chemically degrade from the extra heat, which would render the medicine completely useless.
So the student instantly realizes they need to hit the emergency stop button and escalate this issue immediately.
Right. The stakes become completely tangible.
Let's trace that exact same allergy pill to a completely different section of the presentation, like the module on slide 7 covering materials, suppliers, and batch release.
Good example.
One of the core work areas listed there is supplier quality, and the text just lists tasks like conduct supplier audits and review and approve quality agreements.
Which, let's be honest, sounds incredibly dry to a student.
It sounds like pushing paper in a back office.
It really does. But what if we frame it through our allergy pill narrative? We ask the student, look at the red dye used for this pill's coating. How do we know that dye is actually safe for a human being to ingest?
Oh, that completely turns it into a high-stakes mystery, because we can't just take the dye manufacturer's word for it over an email, right?
Exactly. We have to physically go to their facility, we have to inspect their chemical vats, audit their safety records, and ensure their cleaning procedures are actually robust.
We have to verify they aren't accidentally cross-contaminating our medicine with, like, industrial paint.
Right. By tracking the allergy pill, we transform a seemingly boring paperwork audit into a critical, life-saving intervention.
I can completely see how that narrative thread keeps the student engaged, from start to finish. I mean, they aren't just memorizing disjointed bullet points about equipment qualification anymore.
No, they're not.
They are mentally verifying that the specific HVAC air filtration system hanging above their allergy pill production line is effectively filtering out airborne contaminants.
Exactly. So that the pill remains entirely pure.
Right. The context creates the comprehension.
It really does. But I wonder if we've considered how this narrative approach naturally forces the material to prioritize its most important message.
What do you mean?
Well, because when we step back and look at the presentation as a whole, the structural flow treats all 10 modules with equal weight, which obscures the central overarching mission for a student learner.
Ah, yes. That is a crucial structural weakness here.
Right.
When you review the overarching flow, the presentation moves strictly linearly. It starts with a general overview of the role and then just plunges deeper and deeper into highly specific granular weeds.
Yeah, it gets really dense really fast.
Because by the late stages of the presentation, like slide 9 and 10, we are listing digital tools like document management systems and tracking corporate KPIs like right first time review. Now, to be fair to the author, the very first slide mentions the goal is to maintain a state of control.
True.
And the final slide concludes with the message that quality assurance ultimately protects patients.
Right. It's there at the bookend.
Exactly. But the massive middle section of this presentation completely buries this main idea under just endless lists of competencies, document reviews, and metrics.
Yeah. And there was a very real risk here that focusing solely on this comprehensive encyclopedia-style coverage completely overlooks the student's need for a clear hierarchy of information.
Right, because if everything is presented as equally important, nothing is important.
Exactly. So the suggestion to resolve this structural flaw is to reorganize the flow using a hub-and-spoke model.
Okay, a hub-and-spoke model. Break that down for me.
You need to constantly and explicitly tie every technical requirement back to the core mission, which is the hub, protecting the patient.
I see.
You must clarify the main idea by never letting a technical slide exist in a vacuum. Everything, no matter how granular or in the weeds it is, must connect back to that center hub.
Let's unpack what that looks like in practice. Let's look at the section discussing warehouse compliance on slide 7.
Okay.
The text lists the requirement to ensure stock rotation, and it provides the acronyms FIFO and FEFO.
Right, which stand for first in, first out, and first expired, first out.
Now, I understand why this is included. The author is being thorough by including standard logistics principles.
Sure.
But if we look at this from the perspective of a student cramming for an exam, aren't they just going to lose the forest for the trees?
They absolutely will.
They are going to memorize FIFO and FEFO, thinking they are just standard business efficiency rules, like managing inventory at a retail store.
Right. In a linear list, FIFO and FEFO look like you are just making sure the oldest boxes of cereal get sold first so the grocery store doesn't lose money.
Exactly.
But in a hub and spoke model, we refuse to let that concept sit in isolation. We draw a direct, undeniable line from FFO straight back to the central hub, which is patient safety.
So we have to explain the actual why behind the logistics.
Exactly. We explicitly explain to the student that warehouse stock rotation in a pharmaceutical setting isn't about protecting corporate profit margins.
Right.
It is the specific physical mechanism that prevents a vulnerable patient in a hospital ICU from receiving an expired, chemically ineffective dose of medicine during a critical health crisis.
Wow, yeah. When you make that explicit connection, FIFO stops being a boring logistics acronym and instantly becomes a moral imperative.
It really does. It changes the whole tone of the learning.
Visually, the presentation actually has a built-in tool that could perfectly support this hub-and-spoke model.
Oh, really? What is it?
I noticed a graphic. It's this blue shield icon featuring a white check mark that appears on the top right corner of every single slide.
Ah, yes.
Right now, it just seems to be a piece of corporate branding, or maybe just a decorative template feature.
That's a brilliant observation. That blue shield is currently just sitting there as a passive graphic. But what if we activate it?
What do you mean by activated?
What if we leverage it visually and verbally as our recurring narrative anchor? Every single time a new, highly technical concept is introduced, the material should explicitly point to that shield and ask a specific guiding question.
Oh, I see. So using it as a deliberate teaching prompt.
Yes.
For example, in the section on cleaning validation, on slide 6, the text lists highly technical requirements like defining acceptance criteria and determining a sampling approach.
Right, which sounds incredibly dry. So you physically point to the blue shield graphic on the slide and you ask the student, how does swab testing a massive stainless steel manufacturing tank put a shield between a hazardous chemical residue and the patient?
You force them to articulate the connection.
Exactly.
What about in the training system module? The text lists requirements like periodic GMP training and managing curriculum assignment.
You do the exact same thing. You point to the shield and ask, how does ensuring a machine operator signs an SOP read and understand log put a shield between catastrophic human error and the patient?
That's incredibly powerful.
By constantly, relentlessly circling back to that shield, you prevent the student from ever getting lost in the weeds. They are always oriented toward the ultimate purpose of the work.
This completely shifts the dynamic of the material. We are taking a dense, exhaustive technical manual and carefully calibrating it for a mind that is still in the very process of constructing its foundational understanding of the industry.
Yeah.
It's really about empathy for the learner.
It really is. And the great thing is, these adjustments don't require removing any of the necessary technical rigor.
Right, we aren't dumbing the material down at all.
Not at all. We are simply providing the psychological scaffolding a student needs to successfully climb up to that high level of rigor. It's about ensuring the underlying logic and causality of the work are just as visible as the operational tasks themselves.
Well said. So, to summarize our analysis today, there are 3 highly actionable steps to elevate this material and truly align it with a student audience.
Yep.
First, address the jargon barrier by translating dense acronyms using everyday, relatable analogies before introducing the technical terms, like comparing CAPA to fixing a leaky roof, or ALCOA Plus to a professor grading a term paper.
Absolutely essential.
Second, ground the abstract operational tasks by weaving a unified case study through the presentation, such as tracking the physical production of an allergy pill to clearly explain concepts like deviations and supplier audits.
Grounding it in reality.
Right. And finally, restructure the linear flow into a hub-and-spoke model, using that blue shield visual to constantly tie technical weeds, like warehouse stock rotation, directly back to the central mission of patient safety.
If the author implements those 3 shifts, a student won't just memorize the material, they will actually internalize it.
Warmly invite you to implement these structural and narrative revisions, and we would absolutely welcome you to submit the updated presentation back to us for further review. You know, when we first opened this document, we looked at this job description as a static, somewhat intimidating list of compliance rules, a chaotic alphabet soup of GMP, CAPA, and OOS.
Yeah, it was a lot.
But once you take the time to translate the language, trace the physical journey of a single pill, and connect every minor document review back to that central blue shield, you realize this isn't just a job description at all.
No, it's not.
It's a blueprint for protecting human life. Keep that shield front and center, and your students will never lose sight of why their work matters.